Okay, so tonight we're gonna review a little bit, but also move forward. We're basically gonna create a conceptual mass in the conceptual mass environment, and then move that into the project environment and apply floors, roofs, a curtain system, and kind of just make a building from a conceptual mass that you make in the conceptual mass family. So let's go ahead and open up a new conceptual mass. I'm going to flip to my level 1 floor plan, and I'm going to use reference lines, and I'm going to just kind of quickly lay out 100 feet by, I don't know, 150 feet or so, and let's make that 150 feet. So I tab through to single out that reference line. I'm going to tab through to single out this reference line. We'll go 100 feet. And I think we'll make this a little more interesting by selecting the arc radius tool, and let's move in about 24 feet or so and go 100 feet. Does that make it even? Probably not. What's this dimension here? 24 feet. .26 feet. I'm not really liking how this is working out, so maybe we'll just go ahead and set some dimensions up to make this thing equal. And then do an overall dimension. And let's tab through and should be able to. Okay, let's make that a parameter. Similar to our shape that we made earlier, we'll parameterize this guy. So length will be 150 feet and width will be 100 feet. Hit apply. Trying to do the math in my head. It's 150 feet and 20-foot spacing, 20-foot spacing. So we need 110 feet, right? Yeah. So we'll just go ahead and, I don't know, maybe 130-foot radius. X out of that. And this was drawn as a model line, so I'm going to make it a reference line. And then I'm going to use my trim or my split element command to split this reference line. And now I'm going to use the trim command to trim the arc to these outside lines so that we have this now spaced 20 feet in, 20 feet in, and we've got this arc. How's everybody doing with that?
Can you show us again how to dimension? Because that always
Yeah, so basically we use the dimension tool to dimension from this reference line to the reference plane and then to the reference line again, and we can set that equal to each other, and it's giving me an error because I'm over constraining at this point. And do the same for this side as well.
Yeah, and then how do you like change the dimensions once you do that?
So you have to set an overall dimension then between the two, and then you can make that a parameter. So highlight the dimension line, and under the label tab you can create a new parameter similar to the rectangle or the 3D square that we made last class, and to the 2D profile that we made. I wonder if this thing will flex correctly now that I've screwed it up a little bit. Let's play with it. And it doesn't. So I only use those parameters at first to kind of set the length and width of the overall building. Yeah.
So how did you measure the vertical parcel?
So when you have a line, right, and let's say it's 150 feet, it's a pretty easy number to work with. There's a temporary dimension here, you see, that starts, and I went to 20 feet and clicked, and then I did the math in my head and said, if I want an even spacing, I need 110 foot length of line here, right? So 110 plus 20 plus 20, you get the total 150. And that's really all I did.
And then you trim that.
Yeah, so then I use the split element tool here, and I split this line, and then I used my trim tool to trim what I wanted to keep, or what I didn't want to keep, however you want to word that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and flip to my 3D view, and I want to grab all these reference lines, and I want to create a solid form. I want to go ahead and make this a parameter, so I'm going to click on the permanent dimension line, and then select that and add another parameter to height. And I'm thinking we probably want to do like, let's go 80 feet or so. So we'll make that 80 feet. Now I should start to be able to So this form is kind of locked in place, but if I wanted to, like, you know, make some changes to this mass now that I have it created, make it a little more interesting, I can unlock this guy, deselect and reselect, and now I can start to pull this edge out, or, you know, pull it back. You know, you can also start to add additional profiles and edges to it. So if I wanted to add a profile, I would hover kind of on one edge. You can add an additional profile. And what that allows me to do is select that, and I can start to pull it and curve that wall a little bit. Maybe I want to do it to the back wall too. You can see that shape starting to alter a little bit. The profile line, this one, you can add a profile and select one of the edges of your surface, and there should be a line that appears, and you can kind of place that anywhere you want, and then you can grab individually the profiles and start to manipulate them. Doesn't like that. But so I could grab this top edge and maybe pull him back a little bit. And it's tough to see, but I think that's starting to make this thing sloped. Maybe you can see it from a top view. You see how that's now, this top line is pulled back from the baseline, so now we kind of have a sloping surface. And let's grab this profile edge and just pop him down a little bit. And it's kind of giving me, well, this isn't going to work with your height parameter. So let's just go ahead and delete him, because we got our height that we wanted. And let's tab through and grab this point and maybe move him down just a little bit. So now we're starting to get kind of a real funky shape of a building here. I don't know, I'm kind of just winging the shape, but sometimes they turn out cool and sometimes they don't. But at any rate, we have this shape, and we want to basically start utilizing this as a building envelope, right? So this mass. What we can do is load this mass into our project. And we don't have a project open yet, so let's go ahead and create a new project. And we're going to create an architectural template. Say OK. We need to go back to our family 1. And let's save it as a family and call it Conceptual Mass 2. Save it. And we can load this mass into our project. And this is a warning that just says you don't have show mass in your visible graphics on, so we're going to turn it on for you so you can place this thing. And we can start to spin it with the space bar if you want it a certain direction. So maybe we want this curved wall to be facing south, which is down. So we're going to go ahead and place it. And then you can place more instances of it, but we don't want to, so we'll just double escape out of that command. If we go to our 3D viewport, we can start to see that we have this shape here. And if we select it, we can edit, we can tell it to mask the floors out. And if you see, I only have level 1 and level 2 in here, but I think we can get more levels in this thing. So I'm going to cancel out of this and go into my elevation. And let's copy up several levels in our project environment. How tall do we make this? 80 feet? So maybe 8 levels, roughly. And we can start to dimension these to each other and set them equal to each other, and dimension from level 1 to level 2. We can select level 2, and now we can specify we want a 10-foot floor-to-floor height. And maybe we can maybe push that to 12 feet. Yeah. Let's maybe do 11 feet. Yeah, that looks a little better. Yeah.
Can you explain how to export it into the architectural template one more time?
Sure. So if you're in your conceptual mass environment, you can go load into project. If you don't have a project open, it won't work. So you have to first create a new project. How's everybody doing up until this point? We need to stop and help some people out for a few minutes.
Is the roll still going
Step is to create levels in your project. And so to do that, you select your first level, and with the control key and it selected, you can create more levels. And then setting them equal to each other, and then defining what that distance is between level 1 and level 2. And to change that, you select level 2, and that dimension becomes changeable at that point. We need me to walk through this again? Yeah? Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and select this and delete it. Take that back. I'm not going to delete level 2. Delete that guy. So I'm going to select my level 2, and when I hover over it, a little plus sign appears. If I hit the control key and then select with the left mouse key, I can click and drag to create a new level. And I can do that multiple times. So every level I create, I just keep doing that. And of course, I created 8 levels, and it still thinks there are 8 levels in there. So it's jumping from 2 to 9. Not a big deal. So once you have enough levels that'll kind of justify the amount of height that you have, so 2, 4, 6, 7, I'm going to do one more. I can use the dimension tool to dimension between them. And that equal sign pops up again, and I can make them equal to each other. And then I can define a dimension between level 1 and level 2 if I select the level 2 reference line, I can change that dimension. And if you want to actually see these levels in your project browser, just like in the conceptual mass stage, we created a couple of levels, we can go to our View tab, and under Plan Views, we can select Floor Plans. And you can see those levels appear in this dialog box. And I can hold the Shift key down and select 14, and all of them highlight. I can say OK, and now I have all those levels here in my project browser. So now that we've created those levels, if we highlight the mass and select it in our mass floors edit command here, in the properties of the mass, we can now select all of these levels and say OK. You can see it puts a mass inside, it puts a plane where each one of those reference levels are inside the mass. So right now we've created massing planes, but we haven't created floors yet. So in order to do that, we have to go to our Massing and Site ribbon, and here there are a couple commands where we can create curtain systems, roofs, walls, and floors based upon selecting those massing planes. So if I select the floor command, I can individually select these and use the control key to select multiple. I believe I can also left click and drag, and it allows me to select those planes as well. And you'll notice that we have and up here in the modify place floor by face, we have this create floor command, and that allows us to create the actual level, the actual floor plane inside the mass itself. And so if we select one of these, it's similar to the wall command, except it's a floor, where you can select different types of walls or floors, but you could also edit it, so duplicate and create a new floor. And you could edit the layers of that floor. For now, we're not going to get into that, but it's very similar to the wall command, the wall tool, where we're editing the layers of the wall. So we can also start to create curtain systems. So if I use the curtain system tool here by face, I could pick this curved surface and say create system, and it starts to create a curtain panel system. And right now there's no panel, there's no it's just like a piece of glass with a curtain grid laid on it. And if we select that whole sheet of glass, you can start to create your own spacing grid. So grid 1, grid 2, and defining mullions. typically I like to work with no mullions and no grids at the moment, because then you can kind of create your own. And I'm going to duplicate this. Just so that when I go back to this one, I can put it back to its normal. I always forget to duplicate stuff. You always want to duplicate it, rename it, so that you have the generic template to go back to. Now I'm all screwed up because I had my, okay, none. I'm going to switch back to this 5x10 family, which is the generic family, right, which is the template. I'm going to go to my one that I created, which has nothing in it. I'm going to hit OK. And it'll say, oh, you're deleting all these lines. So yeah, I want to delete them. And so you can start to create your own pattern using the architectural tab, curtain grid. And just by hovering over the edge of the curtain system, you can start to create your own pattern. And it should lock to certain increments. So like that's the midpoint of this wall. And so if I create one there, it should lock again to the midpoint, and the midpoint, 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 midpoint. So it's midpoint between, you know, the two mullions that you created. And so maybe we want to do one more. It also clicks to the third too, so you got to be careful. And then we can start defining this pretty clearly by level too, doing the horizontal. But it also likes to snap to the center.
Where would you go to change snaps? What type of snap?
You can't, I don't think. Yeah. You probably can, but I don't have an answer at the moment because I don't really change the snaps. If you're gonna do something other than center point, it's probably easier to use a grid that's already set up and you can define. So instead of doing your custom grid, you know, you could do a standard grid and, you know, define your spacing and layout through there. And you can have it, you know, fixed distance, fixed number, maximum spacing, minimum spacing. So yeah.
And when does this due?
Sunday. Yeah. So I'm going to make a couple more horizontal grid lines here. Not really, just trying to place them close to the floor plate as possible. You can also go in and select that guy and maybe move him up a little bit. You could also nudge him up with the arrow key. And it seems like I'm missing one on that floor plate. So back to the architecture tab, curtain grid, create that last grid. Now, I don't have any mullions but I want to put some mullions in there. So I can use, under the architecture tab, mullions, and the standard one that it selects is the generic rectangular model mullion, the 2.5 inch by 5 inch. They give you kind of an array of templates. But this is where you could create a custom profile, right? And then change the profile itself. And we don't have a custom profile, and I'm not going to ask you to create one for this project. But in theory, you could go and create a new family type and scroll down to your profile mullion and create your own custom profile, and then apply that to your curtain system. So it's very similar to the reveal profile. It's just it's a little different, but all the tools are the same, and it's a 2D profile. So not going to ask you to do that. Just going to use a rectangular 2.5 by 5 inch rectangular grid, and you can select one grid line, one segment of a grid line, or all the grid lines at once. And I'm going to choose all grid lines. And if you notice, when I hover over it, all of them highlight. One click, and it'll think for a second. But now I've got a custom looking thing. It's not perfect. And you'll learn in the other tutorial when you watch how to actually create a custom curtain panel, which makes it look a little bit more realistic. But for now, on this one, we're just learning how to utilize the tools within Revit, the kind of generic out-of-the-box stuff. So we've got our curtain panel made, and now we want to kind of define. We've got floors masked out and floors created, and we have a curtain panel on this front. But now we want to create walls around this building. And so going back to the Massing Site tab, we can select walls by face. And so we can choose to put, let's not build a specific wall type, but let's go ahead and just do, exterior brick on CMU with a metal stud, and we can start to pick these walls. And it looks like they're backwards, which is awesome. See if we press the space bar. Let me flip to my realistic view here. They're not backwards, it just looks like they are. I need to make one more wall here. And so we've got the mass conflicting with the shape right now, but we can hide the mass after we create this thing. And let's go ahead and put a roof on it as well. Just use the generic 12-inch roof. And we can select these planes. And we have to click Create Roof to create it. Now if we go back to our massing, we can turn off our mass, and we're left with a shell of a building. And I'm pretty sure you have the capability to say, edit this boundary and so I forget what level, that's like level 2. So right now it's kind of on the outside of the wall. We maybe want it to be on the inside of the wall so it's not showing. It's a little hard to see kind of in floor plan because it cuts at 4 feet, right? So, but at any rate, you can change the floor plate after the fact. It doesn't have to stay that floor plate. So now you can see that second floor plate isn't cutting through the walls. I'm going to go ahead and pause that video.